First contact and capture. The deep space reconnaissance vessel Pathfinder drifted silently at the edge of the Cygnus Rift, its advanced cloaking systems rendering it nearly invisible against the backdrop of swirling nebula clouds. Commander Alexis Vega stood at the viewport, her dark eyes fixed on the alien fleet moving in precise formation through the cosmos beyond. 17 warships, she murmured, adjusting the magnification on the observation panel. All heavily armed. Definitely not a trade convoy. Lieutenant Park looked up from his sensor station. We've been monitoring their communications for 3 days, Commander. Our translation algorithm is only catching fragments, but they definitely used military protocols. Highly structured, minimal chatter. Alexis nodded, brushing a strand of short black hair from her face. The United Earth Fleet had dispatched the Pathfinder after long-range scanners detected the unknown vessels entering the outer edges of what humanity considered their sphere of influence. First contact with a new spacefaring species was always delicate, especially when that species appeared so heavily militarized. "What's the status on the biodata?" she asked, turning to Dr. Kapur, the ship's xenobiologist. "Fascinating," Kapur replied, her fingers moving rapidly across her display. "Based on atmospheric composition in their vessels, and what little we can detect of their physiology, they appear to be oxygen brothers with a carbon-based biology, not entirely unlike our own. But their skeletal structure is remarkable, reinforced vertebral columns with natural armor plating. Evolution on a high-gravity world, perhaps. Or evolution for war," Lieutenant Park muttered. Alexis frowned. "Let's not jump to conclusions. Not every species with natural defenses is automatically hostile." "No," Park agreed, "but the plasma cannons and missile arrays on those ships aren't exactly welcoming gifts." The bridge fell silent as the alien fleet shifted course slightly, moving deeper into the sector. For 3 weeks, the Pathfinder had shadowed them, collecting data while remaining undetected. The mission parameters were clear: observe, document, but do not engage. "Commander," the ship's AI announced suddenly, "I'm detecting an energy surge from the lead vessel. They appear to be deploying some kind of scanning array." Alexis straightened. "Could they detect us through our cloaking field?" "Unknown," the AI responded. "Their technology operates on principles we haven't fully analyzed." "Shift our position," Alexis ordered. "Put that large asteroid between us and—" The ship lurched violently, throwing Alexis against the console. Emergency lights flashed as the cloaking system failed. "Direct hit," Park shouted. "They've locked onto us somehow." "Evasive maneuvers," Alexis commanded, strapping herself into the captain's chair. "Full power to shields. Send the emergency data packet back to command." The Pathfinder accelerated, its engines straining as it banked sharply away from the alien fleet. But 3 smaller vessels had already broken formation, moving with surprising speed to intercept. "They're faster than they look," the navigator reported, hands flying across the controls. "Attempting to reach the jump point, but they're cutting us off." Another impact rocked the ship, more violent than the first. Alexis watched as system after system flashed red on her display. "Propulsion at 30%, the AI reported calmly. "Hull breach on Deck 4, contained. Weapons systems offline. They're not trying to destroy us," Dr. Kapur observed, gripping her station as the ship shuddered again. "Those shots are precisely targeted to disable." "They want us intact," Alexis realized. "They want prisoners." The next impact disabled their remaining propulsion. As the Pathfinder drifted helplessly, Alexis made her decision. "All personnel to emergency pods," she ordered. "Download the ship's data to secured personal modules and prepare for emergency departure protocols. I'll remain with the vessel." "Commander," Park protested, "regulations require." "Regulations require preserving our intelligence and the lives of this crew," Alexis interrupted. "1 prisoner is better than 15. "That's an order, Lieutenant." As her crew reluctantly prepared to evacuate, Alexis activated the ship's final protocols. The Pathfinder wasn't a military vessel, but it contained valuable information about Earth and human technology. A series of targeted detonations would render the most sensitive systems useless, while preserving the ship's basic structure and her own life. Through the viewport, she watched as one of the alien vessels approached, extending what appeared to be a docking mechanism. The ship's computer chimed once, confirming that the self-destruct sequences for the classified systems were complete. "Let's hope they're in a talking mood," Alexis murmured to herself as the evacuation pods launched, streaking away toward the distant jump point that would carry them back to human space. The alien ship's docking tube connected with a dull thud that reverberated through the hull. Alexis stood straight-backed in her blue United Earth Fleet uniform, unarmed, waiting at the airlock. First contact was happening, just not in the way anyone had planned. The airlock cycled open, revealing 3 tall figures in gleaming armor. Alexis felt her breath catch. The aliens stood nearly 7 feet tall, their bodies covered in interlocking plates that might have been technological or biological. It was impossible to tell. Their faces were vaguely reptilian, with vertical pupils and amber eyes, and ridged skin in colors ranging from deep purple to slate blue. Most striking, however, were the luminescent markings that traced down their spines, visible through transparent sections of their armor. Each alien had a different pattern, almost like a constellation of stars embedded in their very flesh. "I am Commander Alexis Vega of the United Earth Fleet," she said clearly, hoping their translation systems, if they had any, would pick up her words. "I come with peaceful intent." The tallest of the 3 stepped forward, removing its helmet to reveal a female face with sharper features than her companions. The spine markings on this one were more elaborate, extending from the base of her skull down beyond where her armor revealed them. She spoke, her voice carrying a flanged quality that made Alexis's translator implant struggle to process the unfamiliar language. After a moment, broken phrases began coming through. "Spy vessel. Violation of Karathi space. Submit for judgment." Alexis kept her expression neutral despite the sinking feeling in her stomach. "We did not know this was claimed territory. We are explorers, seeking peaceful contact." The alien, the Karathi, made a sharp gesture, and her companions moved forward to flank Alexis. "Explorers do not hide," the leader said, her words becoming clearer as the translator adapted. "Explorers do not watch from shadow. You will be brought before Supreme Commander Neskar. Your fate rests with her." As they escorted her from her ship, Alexis caught glimpses of Karathi technicians already beginning to examine the Pathfinder systems. She could only hope the destruction protocols had been thorough enough. The Karathi vessel was a study in efficient design. Every surface served a purpose, with minimal concessions to aesthetics. The corridors were wider and taller than human standards, filled with Karathi crew who stopped to stare at the captured human. Alexis noted how they all seemed to defer to her captor, eyes lowering slightly as she passed. The markings on her spine must indicate rank or status. After a journey through several security checkpoints, Alexis was brought to what appeared to be a command deck. At its center stood a Karathi female, significantly taller than the others, her armor more elaborate, her bearing unmistakably that of someone accustomed to absolute authority. The markings on her exposed spine were the most complex Alexis had seen, a brilliant network of glowing points and lines that extended from the base of her skull all the way down her back, visible through specially designed openings in her armor. "Supreme Commander," Alexis's captor said, bowing her head slightly. "The human commander from the spy vessel." Supreme Commander Neskar turned, her amber eyes fixing on Alexis with predatory intensity. When she spoke, her voice carried such natural authority that Alexis felt herself instinctively standing straighter. "I am Neskar, Supreme Commander of the Karathi Expansion Fleet. You have violated sovereign space, deployed cloaking technology in proximity to our battle group, and refused to respond to hailing signals. These are acts of war." Alexis kept her voice level. "We received no hailing signals, Supreme Commander. Our mission is peaceful reconnaissance. We had no knowledge that this sector was claimed by your people. Neskar made a dismissive gesture. Ignorance does not excuse trespass. Your vessel's technology suggests capabilities beyond mere exploration. You were watching us, studying our movements. That's what explorers do, Alexis replied. We study the unknown to understand it. We meant no threat. Neskar stepped closer, towering over Alexis. Up close, the commander's spine markings were even more impressive, pulsing subtly with what might have been biologically generated light. Tell me of your people, human. How many worlds do you occupy? What is your military strength? Why do you send small vessels to probe our territories? I'm authorized to establish peaceful diplomatic contact, Alexis answered carefully. I can tell you about human culture, our values, our desire for peaceful coexistence. Military information is restricted. A sound emerged from Neskar that the translator didn't catch, possibly laughter, though there was nothing warm in it. Your courage is noted, she said. Few would maintain such defiance before a Karathi Supreme Commander. She gestured to the markings on her spine. Each of these points represents a victory, Commander Vega. Some are battles won. Others are species subjugated. Others still are individuals of exceptional skill who challenged me and failed. She leaned closer. Where shall I place your mark, I wonder? The threat was unmistakable. Alexis maintained her composure, though a cold knot formed in her stomach. Supreme Commander, one of the other Karathi interrupted, approaching with a data tablet. Preliminary analysis of the human vessel indicates technological compatibility with the Dravaki. Neskar's expression darkened. The Dravaki Collective? You are allies with them. Alexis frowned. I don't know who the Dravaki are. Humanity has only encountered 3 other spacefaring species before yours. Lies, Neskar hissed. The design principles in your propulsion and communication systems bear Dravaki influences. They have clearly been supplying you with technology. That's impossible, Alexis insisted. We developed our technology independently. The Supreme Commander turned away abruptly. Take the human to containment. Prepare her for formal interrogation. If she is a Dravaki agent, we will extract the truth. As Alexis was led away, she caught Neskar running a finger along the glowing markings on her spine, as if contemplating where to add a new one. The cell they placed her in was austere but not cruel, a simple chamber with a sleeping platform, sanitation facilities, and a transparent barrier instead of bars. Alexis paced the small space, mind racing. The Karathi clearly believed humanity had connections to these Dravaki, whoever they were. A case of convergent technological evolution had been mistaken for evidence of alliance. Hours later, a different Karathi officer arrived with what appeared to be food, a bowl of something resembling blue rice and protein cubes. You will answer Supreme Commander Niskar's questions tomorrow, the officer stated flatly. If you cooperate, you may be granted mercy. And if I don't have the answers she wants? Alexis asked. The Karathi's gaze flicked to her own spine, which bore only a few small markings. Then you will become another point of light on the Supreme Commander's spine. She collects species, you know. Yours would be the 19th to fall before the Karathi expansion. As the officer departed, Alexis sat on the sleeping platform, the gravity of her situation sinking in. She wasn't just fighting for her own survival anymore. Somehow she had to convince these warlike aliens that humanity wasn't their enemy before they decided to make humans their next conquest. Understanding the enemy. Sleep came fitfully to Alexis in her cell aboard the Karathi flagship. The slightly higher gravity and different atmospheric composition left her with a persistent headache and dry throat. When the lights automatically brightened, simulating what she assumed was the Karathi daylight cycle, she was already awake, performing basic calisthenics to keep her body active. The transparent barrier shimmered as a Karathi guard approached. This one was smaller than those she'd seen on the command deck, with only 3 distinct markings on their exposed spine. Commander Vega, the guard said, the translator rendering the words with minimal distortion now. You will eat, then you will be prepared for interrogation. Alexis nodded, accepting the tray of unfamiliar food. She had quickly learned that the Karathi respected stoicism, showing neither fear nor excessive emotion. As the guard turned to leave, Alexis decided to take a risk. Your markings, she said, causing the guard to pause. 3 points. What do they represent? The guard seemed surprised by the question, turning back with narrowed eyes. You notice our Kivrath. If that's what your spine markings are called, yes, Alexis replied, sampling what appeared to be a protein cube. It tasted vaguely of cinnamon, though she doubted the Karathi had anything similar. On Earth, my world, many cultures use body markings to signify achievements or status. After a moment's hesitation, the guard indicated the highest mark near the base of their skull. Combat certification, first level. Then the second, ship defense against Mrekti pirates. And finally the lowest, survival of the blood trials. You're a warrior, Alexis observed, like most Karathi. All Karathi serve according to their strengths, the guard replied, seeming slightly more relaxed. Not all are warriors, but all respect the warrior's path. And Supreme Commander Neskar, her markings are extensive. The guard's posture stiffened immediately. The Supreme Commander bears the most honored Kivrath in the fleet. 28 major victories, 14 subjugations, and 33 personal combat triumphs. There was unmistakable reverence in the guard's voice. None have more. Alexis nodded thoughtfully. Thank you for explaining. In my culture, we record achievements differently. With medals and written commendations, the person remains physically unchanged. How can others know your worth at a glance? The guard asked, genuinely puzzled. They can't, Alexis admitted. They have to speak with me, learn about me. The guard made a sound that might have been dismissive. Inefficient. The Kivrath cannot lie. After finishing her meal, Alexis was escorted by 2 different guards to a chamber that resembled a medical facility. There, Karathi in different uniforms, scientists or doctors, she guessed, performed a series of scans and took blood samples. They spoke little, treating her as a specimen rather than a person. Finally, she was brought to a larger chamber where Supreme Commander Neskar waited, accompanied by several senior officers judging by their more elaborate spine markings. Your physiology is not significantly different from other carbon-based species we have encountered, Neskar began without preamble. Though your muscle density is lower than Karathi standard, suggesting your homeworld has lower gravity. Earth's gravity is approximately 1 g, Alexis confirmed. I estimate your ships maintain about 1.2 g. Precisely calculated, Neskar remarked, sounding almost impressed. You have an analytical mind. I'm trained to notice details, Alexis said. For instance, I've observed that the Kivrath, your spine markings, indicate rank and achievement. Yours are the most elaborate I've seen. Neskar's eyes narrowed slightly. You've been questioning my crew. Learning, Alexis corrected. Understanding you better helps prevent misunderstandings. Understanding will not save your people if you are Dravaki allies, Neskar replied coldly. Their expansion threatened Karathi security for generations until we finally pushed them back to their core worlds. If they are using humanity as proxies to infiltrate this sector, we will respond accordingly. Alexis leaned forward in her chair. Supreme Commander, I give you my word that humanity has never encountered these Dravaki. We have no alliances with them or any interest in threatening Karathi security. Words, Neskar dismissed. The Kivrath cannot lie, but words are merely breath. An idea formed in Alexis's mind. Then test me, she suggested. You've taken blood samples. Surely you have means to detect falsehood physiologically. One of the other officers spoke up. The human's biological responses would be different from our own. Standard truth verification may be unreliable. Nevertheless, Neskar said, studying Alexis with renewed interest, there are methods. She gestured to a nearby console. "Show the human the Dravaki emblem." The display illuminated with an angular symbol that looked vaguely like a stylized star formation. "Have you ever seen this symbol before?" Neskar demanded. Alexis studied it carefully, then shook her head. "Never." The officer monitoring some kind of sensor spoke. "Cardiovascular and neurological responses consistent with truthfulness, accounting for alien physiology." They proceeded through a series of increasingly specific questions about humanity's knowledge of galactic politics, technological development, and military capabilities. Alexis answered honestly where she could and clearly indicated what information she was not authorized to share. As the interrogation continued, she noticed a subtle shift in Neskar's approach, less accusatory, more analytical, as if genuinely attempting to understand rather than simply find guilt. "If what you say is true," Neskar finally said, "then the technological similarities are coincidental, or perhaps evidence that certain engineering solutions are universal," Alexis suggested. "Convergent evolution happens in technology, as well as biology." Neskar paced slowly, her spine markings pulsing subtly. "Even if you are not Dravaki allies, your presence in this sector remains problematic. Humans are an unknown factor, potentially destabilizing." "Or potentially valuable allies," Alexis countered. "Our peoples have different strengths, different perspectives. That can be an advantage." The Supreme Commander stopped, fixing Alexis with an unreadable stare. "You speak of alliance, your single vessel against our fleet. You have courage, Commander Vega, but your position is not one of strength." "Strength isn't always about fleet size or firepower," Alexis replied calmly. "Sometimes it's about being willing to extend trust when others see only threat." For a moment, something shifted in Neskar's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or reluctant respect. But it vanished quickly behind her mask of authority. "Return the human to containment," she ordered. "I must consult with the High Command regarding this situation." Back in her cell, Alexis found the same guard from earlier bringing her evening meal. Taking another calculated risk, she engaged them again. "May I know your name?" she asked. "Or is that inappropriate to ask?" The guard hesitated, then replied, "I am called Trevak." "Thank you for the food, Trevak," Alexis said. "And for explaining the Kavrith earlier. It helped me understand your culture better." Trevak tilted their head slightly. "You spoke with the Supreme Commander today. Few outsiders do so and remain intact." "She's formidable," Alexis acknowledged. "Your people clearly value strength and achievement." "It is our way," Trevak said, then added more quietly, "though not all believe strength must be measured in conquest." The comment was subtle but revealing. Perhaps the Karathi weren't as monolithic in their warrior ethos as they appeared. In human history, Alexis ventured carefully, we've had many cultures that valued military prowess above all else. Over time, most found that lasting greatness came from balancing strength with wisdom, creativity, and cooperation. Trevak studied her for a long moment. "There are some among us who speak similarly. They are not in favor with the current command." "Change often starts as a whisper," Alexis said with a small smile. The guard seemed about to respond when another Karathi appeared in the corridor. Trevak straightened immediately, reverting to formal posture. The newcomer was clearly higher ranking, with at least a dozen spy markings. "Why do you engage the alien in conversation?" they demanded. "Ensuring the prisoner understands proper protocol, Sub-Commander Varric," Trevak responded stiffly. Varric approached the barrier, studying Alexis with cold calculation. "Supreme Commander Neskar has received new directives from High Command regarding your case, human. They are not in your favor." Alexis maintained her composure. "What has been decided?" "The similarities to Dravaki technology cannot be dismissed as coincidence," Varric said. "High Command believes your species has been cultivated by our enemies as potential proxies. The logical response is preemptive neutralization." "You're talking about attacking Earth?" Alexis asked, ice forming in her stomach. First, we extract all possible intelligence from you. Varric continued as if she hadn't spoken. Then, your vessel's navigation data will lead us to your homeworld. My ship's navigation core was destroyed before capture, Alexis said flatly. And I won't provide coordinates to Earth. Varric's mouth twisted in what might have been a smile. Your cooperation is preferred but not required. Supreme Commander Neskar has authorized cognitive extraction. From the corner of her eye, Alexis noticed Trevac's subtle flinch at these words. When? She asked simply. The procedure is being prepared. You have one standard cycle to reconsider voluntary cooperation. Varric turned to leave, then paused. The Supreme Commander was impressed by your composure. As a gesture of respect, she has granted you the right of ceremonial challenge before extraction. What does that mean? Alexis asked. Varric's expression was one of cold amusement. It means you may face her in combat according to ancient tradition. No human has ever earned such an honor. With that, he departed. After both Carithi had gone, Alexis sat heavily on her sleeping platform. Cognitive extraction sounded ominous, likely some form of forced mind-reading or memory downloading that would leave her brain damaged or dead. And this ceremonial challenge was clearly meant as a final humiliation rather than a real opportunity. Yet something about Trevac's reaction suggested not all Carathi approved of these methods. There were fractures in their seemingly united front, differences of opinion about how their society should conduct itself. Hours later, when the corridor was quiet and the lights dimmed, Alexis heard a soft voice from the direction of her cell barrier. Commander Vega, Trevac whispered, barely visible in the low light. Listen carefully. Not all Carathi support the Supreme Commander's methods. There are those who believe true strength lies in understanding, not conquest. The reformists you mentioned, Alexis surmised. Yes, the ceremonial challenge is intended as symbolic. No alien has ever defeated a Carathi warrior in sanctioned combat. But there are aspects of our traditions that might be leveraged by one who understands them. Alexis moved closer to the barrier. Tell me everything you can. As Trevac began explaining the intricacies of Carathi combat ritual and the deeper significance of the Caverith, Alexis listened with growing understanding. The spine markings weren't simply decorative or status symbols. They were integral to Carathi psychology and social structure. And perhaps, just perhaps, they represented a vulnerability that could be exploited. Why are you helping me? She finally asked. Trevac was silent for a moment before answering. Because the path we are on leads to endless war. Because some of us believe the Caverith should represent wisdom gained, not merely battles won. A pause. And because I have studied your vessel's transmissions. Humans value individual life in a way that reminds me of what we once were. As Trevac departed with promises to return with more information, Alexis began mentally preparing herself. The ceremonial challenge would almost certainly end in her death, but if she could use it to make a statement, to perhaps plant seeds of change within Carathi culture, that might be worth dying for. In her mind, she began formulating a plan, one that would require perfect timing, deep cultural insight, and more than a little luck. She would have one chance to challenge not just Neskar, but the entire philosophy of conquest that the Supreme Commander's glowing spine represented. The challenge. The Carathi ceremonial arena was a circular chamber with high walls and tiered seating, reminiscent of ancient Roman coliseums on Earth. As Alexis was led in by her guards, she took careful note of the several hundred Carathi officers assembled to witness what they clearly expected to be her humiliation and defeat. Supreme Commander Neskar stood at the center of the arena, her ceremonial armor accentuating rather than covering the elaborate markings that ran down her spine. Under the chamber's specialized lighting, the Caverith glowed with an almost hypnotic intensity, each point a testament to some victory or conquered foe. Alexis wore a simple tunic provided for the occasion, a dark gray garment that covered her modestly but offered no protection. She had been allowed to perform stretching exercises in her cell, but was obviously expected to enter combat cold, without proper warm-up or preparation. Commander Alexis Vega of Earth intoned a Karathi official with elaborate facial markings. "You have invoked the right of ceremonial challenge granted by Supreme Commander Neskar. Do you understand that by the ancient traditions of the Karathi, this combat is to submission or death?" "I understand," Alexis replied, her voice calm despite the hammering of her heart. "And do you, despite being alien to our ways, accept that the outcome of this challenge is binding upon your honor and your life?" "I do." The official turned to address Neskar. "Supreme Commander, do you acknowledge this challenge as valid under the Code of Seven Suns?" Neskar's expression remained impassive. "I acknowledge it and grant the outsider the dignity of proper combat." From the corner of her eye, Alexis spotted Trevak standing at attention among the lower-ranked guards. Their gaze met briefly, a silent confirmation that everything they had discussed was accurate. The plan she had formulated was risky beyond measure, but it was the only chance she had. The official stepped back. "The challenge will proceed with traditional weapons. As the challenged party, Supreme Commander Neskar will select the arms." Neskar gestured, and an attendant approached carrying a long case. When opened, it revealed two identical weapons, curved blades approximately 3 feet in length, with handles designed for Karathi grip, but usable by human hands. "The Krelvar," Neskar announced. "The sword of honor, forged from stellar metal. Its edge never dulls, its strike never falters." She selected one, leaving the other for Alexis. Lifting the weapon, Alexis was surprised by its perfect balance, despite being designed for a larger being. The blade seemed to catch the light in unusual ways, hints of blue and purple shimmering along its edge. "The combat begins at the third chime," the official declared. "It ends with submission, incapacitation, or death." As Alexis took her position opposite Neskar, the vast difference in their physical capabilities was starkly apparent. The Supreme Commander stood nearly 2 feet taller, with significantly greater reach, strength, and presumably centuries more combat experience. By any rational assessment, Alexis had no chance of victory in traditional combat. But that wasn't her plan. The first chime sounded, deep and resonant, filling the chamber. "You face me with admirable courage, human," Neskar said, her voice pitched for Alexis's ears alone. "Few of your size would stand before a Karathi Supreme Commander by choice. Sometimes the greatest courage is knowing when not to fight," Alexis replied, adjusting her grip on the Krelvar. The second chime echoed through the arena. "A curious sentiment before combat," Neskar observed, her stance shifting subtly into what must be a traditional opening position. "I've learned much about Karathi ways in my time here," Alexis said, "especially about the Kivrith." The third chime sounded. Neskar moved with shocking speed, covering the distance between them in what seemed like a single heartbeat. Her blade traced a perfect arc toward Alexis's shoulder, a strike clearly meant to disable rather than kill immediately. Alexis had anticipated this. According to Trevak, Karathi combat tradition valued a methodical approach, demonstrating superiority through progressive dominance rather than immediate killing strikes. It gave her the opening she needed. Instead of attempting to parry, which would have been futile against Neskar's superior strength, Alexis dropped into a roll that took her past the Supreme Commander's guard. The maneuver clearly surprised Neskar, who had expected a more conventional defense. "Unorthodox," Neskar commented, turning smoothly to track Alexis's movement, but ultimately futile. The next series of attacks came in rapid succession, controlled, precise strikes that Alexis could only evade through desperate mobility. She used every inch of the arena, keeping distance where possible, using the larger alien's momentum against her when proximity was unavoidable. Minutes passed this way, with Alexis managing to avoid serious injury, but unable to mount any effective offense. The watching Karathi murmured among themselves, clearly surprised by the human's unexpected resilience. "You delay the inevitable," Neskar said during a momentary pause in her assault. Her breathing remained controlled, her stance perfect. "Submit now, and I will end this quickly." "Not yet," Alexis replied, her own breath coming in ragged gasps. "First, I'd like to understand something about the Caverith." Nescar's eyes narrowed fractionally, the first hint of genuine emotion she had displayed. "This is combat, not education." "Combat is education," Alexis countered, remembering Trevac's words about Karathi philosophy. "The greatest warriors learn even as they fight." It was a calculated appeal to Karathi pride, and it seemed to work. Nescar paused, her head tilting slightly. "What would you know of our sacred markings?" Alexis circled cautiously, maintaining distance while she spoke. "Each mark represents a victory, yes. But more than that, they represent identity. Who the Karathi is, what they have achieved, their value to your society." "Correct," Nescar acknowledged, her own movement mirroring Alexis. "The Caverith cannot lie. They are the physical manifestation of worth." "And yours," Alexis continued, gesturing with her free hand toward Nescar's glowing spine. "Tell the story of conquest, of subjugation, of domination over others." Nescar's expression hardened. "They tell of strength, of the natural order. The strong lead, the weak follow or perish." "Is that truly strength?" Alexis asked, her voice carrying across the now silent arena. "Or is it simply fear?" The question seemed to hang in the air between them. In the audience, Alexis noticed several Karathi shifting uncomfortably. The reformist faction, perhaps, who had been waiting for someone to voice such thoughts publicly. Nescar's next attack came with renewed fury, a series of slashes that Alexis barely evaded, one catching her arm and drawing first blood. The crowd's murmur grew louder. "You know nothing of our ways," Nescar hissed, pressing her advantage. "I know that true strength doesn't need constant validation.